to another episode of Kind of Different, the podcast where we talk about innovation. We connect with some truly amazing guests in the dental industry, and we talk about how we can all together make dental care more human. I'm Matt Allen, CEO and co-founder of DifferentKind, and super pumped to have with me today somebody that is just a bright, shining ray of light whenever I get the chance to talk with her or interact with her online, which is what we'll be talking about today, given her expertise. Sarah Rubert, thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're really pleased to have you. Would love to have you kind of give our listeners a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, what your company is, et cetera, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Gosh, a bright spot. Geez, man, that's like a lot to live up to. But thank you so much. I always love talking to you. So thank you for having me. Hello to everyone. My name is Sarah. I am the CEO of our Thrive Tribe. We are a social media and business development agency within the DSO dental industry. We really just help people build relationships with their target audience in a meaningful and authentic way. And I'm just really excited to help people get in front of the people that they want to bring into their practices and businesses.
Well, I certainly think that that's a great space for us to start, because I think that, when we think about kind of social media and connecting with customers and, some of that piece, right? Like there hasn't necessarily been a lot of, I would say, very thoughtful innovation that's happened in the dental industry around this. And we've had some good conversations about that. So tell us just, kind of how you feel like your company helps to, innovate in this space, helps dentists to, dental groups to connect with those patients. Like, what do you really see as your role in that space?
Well, and even really starting my company, I was inspired by all of the happy National Tooth Fairy Day, which is important. Don't get me wrong. August is a great month and the Tooth Fairy is very important, but it just lacked a lot of connection for people, which is something that's really important to me. And so what we get to do is create meaningful content that's centered around the practices themselves or the businesses themselves that we work with. But people want to know and like who they work with or where it is that they're going. So we want to give them insight into who is the dental practice, who works at the dental practice. Hey, what does the dental practice look like? I don't know about everybody. I need to know, Matt, what the place looks like. For example, super tiny story. I went to not a medical office, but I went to a place that I had an appointment at, and their entire front of their building was all that like reflective glass. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't see in, and the door wasn't clearly marked. I had no idea where I was going. So like all these people are looking out at me as I'm like, where is it that I'm going? I was mortified, but it's like, tell me what does the front door look like? So I think that even small things like that are important, but a lot of practices don't have the time or don't necessarily know what kind of content to create. So we really try to focus on the practice or the business itself to tell a story as to who they are as a business, and let people decide as to whether or not that's somewhere that they want to go. I feel like that was a broad answer, but
not at all. What I'm hearing from you there, Sarah, is this idea of creating authenticity within a practice, and especially how that's projected outward, right? Because I think sometimes, at least from what I've seen, right, it's these like very general ideas of like, why should you come to see your dentist every 6 months or whatever? And it's like, that's fine. I mean, again, like you said, Happy Tooth Fairy Month is fine. But it's not necessarily helping me know you or like understand who you are, what your values are, and whatever. And when we think about that trust relationship with a healthcare provider, right, we want to know those people. We want to know their space. We want to know the other people in their office, et cetera. And so it sounds like you're saying, hey, authenticity is very important to me. We're helping people to do that.
That's important. And two, when you're marketing, one of the most important things you have to decide or determine is, what is your unique selling proposition? Well, gone are the days, as I'm sure you know, gone are the days to where you can say advanced technology really sets us apart. And it's like you and everybody else. So the number one thing that really sets you apart is your team, your culture, like those kinds of things. And so not only the content that we create, but engagement is something that's really, really important too. How you portray yourself, whether or not some practices don't respond to any comments like respond to the comments on their posts. And it's like, you have to do that. Like saying nothing does in fact say something. So, but yes, authenticity, showing what it is, how you guys are different than the dental practice that's more than likely 5 feet away from you because they're everywhere.
Totally. Like really understanding those differences for sure is huge. Tell us, like as we think about this kind of idea of marketing and putting yourself out there, and just the whole patient journey in general, right? I think that there's a lot of that right there because your internal culture is going to be reflected in your external brand, and all of those things. Tell us about one area of the dental ecosystem that you think could most benefit from change, and how innovative practices out there could take advantage of the change that you kind of see as, hey, here's one spot where I think there's an opportunity.
Sure. I think dental practices themselves, oh man, Matt, hold on. Somebody just messaged me on LinkedIn, and I had this thought in my mind, and I was like, oh, this is going to be the best answer ever. And it distracted me.
You good?
Stupid LinkedIn. I mean, amazing LinkedIn because I love it, but, a way that practices can something that they can do differently within their practice themselves to separate them, right? That was the question.
Yeah, just one spot in the dental ecosystem that you think would benefit from change. So, could be, any part of the patient journey, could, something like that, something that where you feel like, hey, there's a gap here, and, people can take advantage of that, and then potentially talk about it. I think that's how the link back to the marketing piece was how I think.
Okay. Well, one aspect that I do think that they can, that needs improvement is even if you work with a marketing company or social media company, it's really important to have that internal ambassador, if you will, whether or not they don't have to, I know a lot of practices will say, hey, dental assistant Susie, we also want you to do social media for us. That social media is a full-time job, but somebody that's able to provide that insight to whomever it is, whether they're internal or whether internally they're managing social media, but really putting a focus on who they are as a practice. I feel I just see so many did you know posts, or did you know that red toothbrushes are more commonly purchased than blue ones, or vice versa. I can't remember. Filler, which are fine posts, but I think if they really just sat down, and I know where my train of thought was going. I think what people need to really realize is that social media is not just a tool for getting new patients. It's for maintaining and keeping existing patients, your team. If I work for a company, if I work for a practice or a company and they like to highlight the team on their social media, it's like, my company really likes me, or it's really important to promote us to the outside world. That's a great retention tool. And it's also really great for potential new hires. So I know a lot of practices are struggling with hiring right now. And I guarantee you that as they're looking through, hygienists are hot commodities, right? So they're kind of like the hot blonde on the beach that gets to make the, have their pick. So if they go to all of these practices that maybe they've applied to, and one has a great presence or great content on social media that really shows who they are as a practice and not who they say they are in an interview, hot blonde is picking them. So
yeah, for sure. It's kind of the operationalization of that culture, right? Of hey, look, you are who you say you are, right? And it's happening, and it's being projected out there into the world, which I think is really good. And you're talking about storytelling right there too, which I think that feels like a gap that a lot of people may be missing, right? Because they're talking about the dentist in general or dental care in general, which again is fine. But so who are you, and what is that story? And people will connect with that, whether that's staff, like you're saying, or whether that's patients who want to keep coming back to you because they believe in that story, right? We all want a story to believe in. So
I agree. And you don't have, people get nervous about being too personal, and you do what's comfortable for you, but it is nice to know. I mean, I'm a loose lips, sink ships kind of girl. So I sink a lot of ships because I'll tell anybody anything, but not everybody. And people will look at me and say, I don't know if I want to be that way on social media, or what do we say, or what do we do? And it's just what's important to you? What's important to you? What do you value? What's something that you're passionate about? I'm really passionate about I'm really passionate about glitter. I love glitter. And if I speak passionately about something, if I speak about something or post about something that I am passionate about, it doesn't come across as, oh, they're just trying to like sell me on their coming to their practice. This is legit who they are. So when people meet me in person, they're going to be like, you like glitter, don't you? Oh, I sure do. Sure do.
My kids got glitter, not too long ago, and it was like one of the scariest days of my life, right?
My ex banned glitter from my life. Like none of my friends were allowed to get me glitter cards, nothing. So that's why he's my ex. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you gotta embrace your strengths, right? Embrace the things you love. So I love it. And I think, getting back to that point though too is just like be yourself, right? And then that's ultimately what people want. It's authenticity, it's being yourself. And that's going to look different for everyone. And you're not going to be right necessarily for every single patient out there, right? But if you are yourself, you're going to be right for the right patients. And that's a really important thing that we can
absolutely
all take away. As you're an amazing human, and I think you have such a wealth of experience. And the first time, one of the first times that we got to jump on a call together, like got to hear a lot of your story and whatnot, which is super fun. And I think that as we, help our listeners understand a little bit more about who you are, I would love if you could just tell us something that has like been impactful for you as a patient, and what that's meant to you, and kind of how that shaped your experience of healthcare and your perception of that in general. If you have a story, we would, I think, all benefit from hearing something that has been impactful for you as a patient.
I do have a story. My story is it's funny, right? When you're in the industry, you don't do the things like we don't practice what we tell other people to do, So even as like marketing, right? Like, I mean, for the most part, we do, but sometimes like we don't even take our own advice. But I picked a dentist local to me, and of course I like walked in and I was like, I know what SRP is. You don't have to explain it to me, because I work in the industry. Like I know stuff. But I've gone there for my cleanings and things. But the office manager is amazing. She's funny. I get along with her. When I call her, she's just always so super helpful, goes out of her way, and she's observant, which I love. So much so. And I think that this is an important story to tell about, how your teams really impact your patients, because I went to have a crown put on and the dental assistant put it on incorrectly and glued it on. It's there for good. That's, as a patient, like I get that mistakes happen, but it really made me kind of stressed out and unhappy. Now I have to go back and they have to cut it off, which sounds terrible, and put another crown back on. And I literally said to somebody, I said, the only reason I'm staying at this practice is because of the office manager and my relationship with her. I mean, I even called her and was like, ma'am, can I have a different dental assistant? She's like, absolutely. Like, it matters. You want to feel important. And not only that, one of my favorite things about her is her memory. I know that I really believe that this can be practiced, but I think observance is key to building relationships. When I went in, I must have told her that I was traveling to a dental conference, and I came in like a month later and she was like, hey, how was that dental conference that you went to? And I was like, you remembered that? Like, I was blown away. It makes me feel like I'm important. So that's it's interesting to look at it from a patient experience, like in talking to you and being in our industry. It's like, I'm a living, breathing, example. I don't even really have a relationship with the dentist. It's the office manager that I love. So
it's a beautiful story, and I think highlights the power of team-based care, right? Of everyone's going to probably connect to someone different, but if there is someone that they can connect to, right, it can create that really strong bond with their practice, and help you ultimately achieve your oral health goals, which is lovely. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that.
Sure.
I love this question because it's just always something that is really fun to talk about in terms of strengths and people, doing really cool things in the world. What's something that you feel super proud of? Like when you think of something where you're like, hey, something that people might not know, or something where it's like, hey, look, like, what are you really, really proud of that you were just stoked to share with the world?
That I survived a year of owning my own business. I mean, I never thought, I always identified as an entrepreneur. this is what I can do. I'm a cheerleader. I can stand on the sidelines and I can do whatever people need or want me to do. And I'm going to help build them up. There's no way I could ever own my own business. And I mean, shout out to the DEO really for teaching me a lot. Just spending time with all of those entrepreneurs kind of gave me insight like, oh, being a visionary isn't bad. Not just because I have ideas doesn't mean that I have to be the one to implement them. Literally, I probably can't be the one to implement them, which I've learned. So it's been really, that's something that I'm really proud of. I went to New York with my dad for Christmas, and it was just neat he's this like big CEO guy. So for him to introduce me to somebody and say, hey, this is my daughter. She's the CEO of a company. It was like, I am, aren't I? Okay. And I'm doing pretty good. So I would say, even though most people know that I own my own company, it's just been a wild ride. So I've surprised myself.
I love it. And it's fun when you surprise yourself. You're like, yeah, I can do this, right? Like you start to see that like internal capacity and you're doing it. And I love it. It's so
yeah. I get to tell people that my boss is pretty cool. Some people, catch it. Some people are like, oh, that's cool that you have a cool boss.
I love it. That's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing, those kind of personal stories, right? Those, it's always great to, we all have the things that we're scared of or proud of or, whatever, right? The journeys that we're on that people might not see in terms of, sitting on LinkedIn or sitting even in a chat sometimes. So thanks for sharing those kind of more personal stories
Sure.
with our listeners. I want to jump to making dental care more human and specifically kind of tapping into your expertise around that. So when you think about, one of the things that I always like to try to do is make advice and kind of tips or whatever actionable, right? Something that people could do tomorrow or, relatively soon. It's not a huge change, not something that has to change big systems. So when you think about that, like one small, easily implementable tip based on your experience and what you do every day, what would you say is one thing people could do to improve some part of the patient journey from perspective?
I think one simple thing that they can do is start using social media. And I know it might sound silly to, well, and I kind of have like two. One's not so simple, but I start using social media because it really does open a door or open the window into who you guys are. And it helps to humanize you more as a practice. You don't have to do it. And like you'd mentioned, you be you. You don't have to. There's a dentist in Idaho that I follow that like constantly does reels. He's like rolling around his office on his, on his little wheelie chair and doing funny stuff. And people are like, oh my gosh, I have to do that. No, you don't. You do you. But just to even start posting authentic content, I think is important. And the maybe not so simple thing, or maybe it is just really paying attention to to the patients and who they are and what they like. If that means looking at if they've commented on a portion of your social media, and so now you guys are connected and look at it and they have a French bulldog named Tiny that they love, like make a note in their chart. Here I am like paper chart. I doubt there's very many paper charts, but make a note like they love their brindle French bulldog named Tiny. So when they come in, you can mention, how's Tiny? It's like, where's my checkbook? I'm going to write a blank check to like take my money. If you're going to talk to me about my dog Tiny, or if they see that I have plants and they're like, you commented the other day and we looked at your profile and we saw that you like love plants. How do you do it? I'd be like, let me tell you. So just really being observant and making notes about the patients and really making it about them and remembering them. It makes such a huge difference.
Well, I honestly think that, so you gave us like a tip of like, hey, start using social media. And then my next question for you is going to be like, so how do you make that connected and how do you make that rooted and how do you make that like authentic and kind and whatever? And I think you just answered that question as well, right? Which is you're saying, hey, remember those things. And I think, whether that's writing it down or having someone on your staff who's just really good at that or whatever, right? Like remembering who people are, what's important to them, what they value sounds, like a way that you're recommending for all of us to make that work really connected and rooted. And not just doing it in the office, but being able to do it, online as well, both of those things kind of in conjunction, or bringing in some of what's happening on social media to the office so that if you saw them comment on social media this way, when they come in next week, right, we're talking about it. That's a tough thread to pull. Maybe not tough, but like it just takes paying attention, I would say, or being observant, like you said.
It does. And not everybody is like, it comes naturally to me. I think it can be taught, right? Like to listen to something, but it's also a matter of having the right people in the right positions, like even at us as companies, right? We have to have the right people in the right butts in the right seats. And if you have, it's called, for anybody listening and watching, like customer intimacy is a term that I've just recently become familiar with. And I know that's how I run my business, really my life ultimately. But it's something that I think a term that I know I'm going to use more frequently in 2023. And it's something to really kind of look into, but people who are high on the customer intimacy, not that there's a level, but people who are well versed in that, I think would be better suited to be like patient facing, or even, it's important. Do I have time to tell like one super fast, tiny little story?
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
It's something that I at an old job, it's just kind of an example. At an old job, I had, I wasn't a salesperson, but I picked up the phone and it was a doctor and he was like, hey, I'm interested in marketing and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, well, all of our salespeople are at a conference right now and I can have them call you back, but let me get some basic information. And of course I'm talking to him and he's like, oh, don't mind if you can hear my dogs, but I have 2 miniature schnauzers and one of them's on my lap. And I'm like, oh, what are their names? And he was like Lenny and Larry or whatever they were. And he told me this story about these dogs that he clearly loves. Mm-hmm. So like I went to hand over the information to the salesperson. I was like, look, you better let them know that I told you about Larry and Lenny, like mentioned, Sarah told, like, I thought it was really valuable information to provide. And they were like, great. Okay. And they're like, hey, doctor. So yeah, so you called. So tell me what it is that you need. And it's like, I just told you what they need. I told you about their dogs. Like that to me was like, wow, that's not relationship building. And they did not get the sale. No.
That's a great example. And I think that there's so many aspects of that where, as a part of the patient journey, right? Where if you're communicating between your team, right, and those warm handoffs, those, hey, like this happened and whatever, and I don't know how to go and retell the story. It's so frustrating as a patient when you go and you've like literally just given all of your health history to someone. They're like, so tell me about your health history or whatever, right? And you're like, I just spent 15 minutes filling out a paper. I had to talk to it about somebody else, and now I have to do it again, right? And so I think it's such an important piece of like being able to pull the thread through on your team for that person. That's a great example that you've shared with us. Thank you for taking the time to tell that story.
Sure. My pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, this has really been a pleasure. I mean, we could sit here and chat all day about this, I know. But in the, keeping our ethos of like, hey, we want to create a podcast that people can listen to on their commute or going to the store or whatever, right? If people want to get in touch with you, learn more, tap into your expertise, whatever that might be, where can they connect with you? Where would you recommend that they find you? Please share with us where they can learn more.
Absolutely. I hang out all day, every day on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me there. And also you can email me at Sarah, SARAH, please, Sarah at ourthrivetribe.co, because we fancy. Yeah. And, but yeah, those would be the 2 best ways to get in contact with me.
Awesome. And if you ever get the chance to meet Sarah at a meeting, make sure you get one of her business cards because they're the coolest business cards that I've ever seen. So as a former designer, photographer, someone who cares a lot about that world, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So well done on that as well. Sarah, thank you so much for your time today. It's really a pleasure to get to hang out with you. We are all better for hearing about how you see the world and how you see our opportunity to connect with the patient in a way that maybe a lot of dental groups or dental practices haven't thought of before. So thanks for taking the time today.